Did you know that every day millions of people cross the River Thames in London? But most of these people are blissfully unaware they're doing so. Why? Well, because they don't travel over the river and they don't travel in the river, because that would be really cold, gross and smelly. No, they travel under it in one of the many tunnels that make up London's transport network. But 200 years ago, this would have seemed like the stuff of dreams. At this time, the only way to cross the Thames was either by boat, which was difficult given that the Thames at the time would have been packed full of boats and ships, or by travelling all the way up to London Bridge, crossing there and then travelling back down the river on the other side. Whoa, well that's time consuming. Gosh, it was about time someone built a tunnel. So how did we get from there to where we are today? Well, amazingly, the first ever tunnel to be built under a river is located right here in Rotherhithe, South London. Incredibly, it's still in use today. This extraordinary feat of engineering was built to help both people and cargo cross the river. But who built it? And what was life like for the people who worked on and used the tunnel? Well, today I'm visiting a very special museum to find out. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Today I'm at the Brunel Museum in Rotherhithe, London. This fascinating museum tells the story of the Thames Tunnel. Now, you may have heard of Isambard Kingdom Brunel, as he was a very famous Victorian engineer. An engineer is someone whose job it is to work out how to build things. We'll be coming to Isambard a bit later, but it was actually his father, Mark Brunel, who started this project, and he too was an engineer. To build the tunnel, Mark used something called a shield. Inside the shield, each worker had his own spot, and they all dug forwards into the wall at the same time. They stopped digging after a few centimetres so that the whole shield could be pushed forwards into the newly created gap. Today, you can't get down to see the tunnel because it's still in use by the railways, but you can see the original route down. Let's go. The shaft actually carries on much further down, but half of it has been covered by the floor you see today, which was a later addition. When it was first built, it would have been even more impressive, as you would have been able to see all the way down to the tunnel entrance. These stairs are modern, but you can still see where the original ones were built into the walls, winding around the outside. The shaft was actually built on the surface above ground. When it was complete, the heavy shaft sunk into the soft earth of the riverbed, giving them access underneath the river to start digging. Whilst the Brunels, both father and son, were at the head of the Thames Tunnel project, there were many more people involved. I wonder now what they imagined it would be like and when they thought it would be finished, and I wonder what they'd think of it now. Wonder what this is.
I'll always remember the Thames Tunnel as being one of the most exciting times. Mind you, Mark and I had been through a lot together by this point. We met in France during the French Revolution. He came close to getting his head chopped off, you know.
Wow, imagine that. This tunnel may never have existed.
But he managed to escape, fleeing to America just in time. I, on the other hand, being English, was accused of being an English spy. I mean, really. Nonetheless, they locked me up in a convent full of nuns because the prisons were full up. Then there was the time, many years later, of the misfortune. We ran out of money.
Oh dear, running out of money and being in debt wasn't like it is today.
Mark was sent to debtor's prison for it, and I, being his wife, of course accompanied him. Oh, but the tunnel was to prove an altogether different challenge. You see, every 2 hours throughout the night, Mark had to wake, rise and head out into the dark and bitter cold, making his way to the tunnel. That's when I came up with a genius idea. I took a small box, attached to it a piece of string and a bell so that the foreman could drop his report into the box, ring the bell and wake up Mark. Mark would then pull the box up by the string from the outside of our window, read the report, drop in his instructions and send it back down. Et voila, as Mark used to say. No more trudging out into the bitter cold at the dead of night.
Wow, what a life and what a team they made together. The project was actually only supposed to take 3 years, but it ended up taking 18. Now, Mark's son, Isambard, also worked on the tunnel with his father. In fact, Mark made him a chief engineer at the age of only 19. Ugh. What's this doing here?
It was exciting, being part of such a big project and such a marvelous time. It was an age of innovation and enterprise. Infrastructure is the backbone of a nation, and we were building a legacy that would live on for generations. But you see, something like this had never been done before. A tunnel under a river. Many people said it couldn't be done. In fact, there were many people who believed we were burrowing into hell itself. You're flirting with the Underworld, they'd tell us. Oh, how my father used to get frustrated by people running away from danger or blaming anything that went wrong on some superstitious nonsense. That said, there were times when people were right to be cautious. We had about 140 men working on the tunnel at any one time. Miners, bricklayers, excavators, labourers. But the thing, you see, is they were showered in Thames water the entire time, and so we had to keep the men working in only 2-hour shifts, and many said it was the worst job in the world.
Ugh, I'm not surprised. It would be a bit grim today to be showered in Thames water, but back in the Victorian times, the Thames was the biggest open sewer in the world, so they'd have been showered in Thames water full of poo and wee whilst they worked. Ugh, no wonder they could only work in 2-hour shifts.
Oh, and it was nothing like engineering in your time. The men had no hard hats or any sort of safety equipment to make the job safer, and they certainly had no electrical equipment to make it go any faster. Now, it was the 12th of January, 1828. I was down in the tunnel assisting a couple of workers in the shield when we heard a noise, and then suddenly a torrent of water came rushing in, knocking us all off our feet and extinguishing our lanterns, and suddenly we were under the river in total darkness. Everyone that could rushed up the stairs, but before I could make it up, I was swept away by an immense wave and hurtled off down the tunnel. But by some miracle, I was pulled out through that very window, still here today. I made it out alive that morning, but 6 of our men did not. I didn't return to that site for a great long while. In fact, we closed it for 7 long years. But in 1835, we restarted the work. And by 1843, this glorious tunnel was opened. What do you think?
It did open in 1843, but sadly by that point there was no money left, so they never could install the ramps down to the tunnel for the horses and wagons to transport the cargo, as was the initial point. Instead, it became a walkway for people under the river. What's this doing over here?
It was the 25th of March 1843 when me, my husband George and our two girls, well, we all paid a penny to go down the staircase and wonder at the tunnel. Well, we weren't the only ones, you know, no. 50,000 people went that day. Imagine walking underwater. Who'd have thought it? Within a couple of months, people from far and wide were coming to see it.
That's right. The completed tunnel really was a wonder. True, it didn't quite go to plan. Horse and carts never could use it. But people weren't just coming from Britain to see it. No, they were coming from all over the world.
Calling it the 8th wonder of the world they are. The 8th wonder right here in Rotherhithe. Here, said George one night, I've been talking to Frank down the Stag's Head, and he said there's talk of people selling stuff down there. There's even talk of there being entertainment down there. Circus performers, fire eaters, that sort of thing. Well, it wasn't long before me and George, we set up a little stall to sell souvenirs, you know, under the arches. Oh, 10 years we were down there for. Yeah, nearly 10 years selling stuff. But then, well, lost its sparkle, didn't it? Folks stopped coming. Well, we couldn't compete with the fancy likes of the Eiffel Tower and such like. We had to shut up shop. No, you didn't want to go down there after that. No, not unless you wanted to meet pickpockets and people like that. Ugh. Well, the story in the papers now is that the railways have bought it. A train going underneath the water. A train! Who'd have thought it?
I've had a great time today uncovering the history of the Thames Tunnel. All those people coming together to make it happen. What an incredible story. They believed they could do it, and so they did. Imagination is everything, isn't it? I'll see you next time.